One. So you looked at an activity today that dealt with graphs of log functions and kind of learning what the shape of those graphs look like. We're going to pull that together in just a minute and make sure that you have all of the correct information to write down in your notes. But I wanted to make sure that one of the points that was made in that activity really got driven home hard. Okay, I want to make sure that you understood what I was talking about when I was talking about the inverses of the log functions, because the sooner you understand this, the easier your life is going to be. So let's start with a log function. Let's start with y equals log, and it can be any base we want, log base 2 of x, we'll say. Okay, y equals log base 2 of x. And let's suppose that I tell you that I would like you to find the inverse of that function. I'm just trying to make this a little bigger for us. So you have two choices right now. Whenever I ask you to find an inverse, typically your first step is to switch the x and the y, right? So you may choose to immediately say, let's make this x equals log base 2 of y. But then we need that thing rewritten so that the y is by itself. And the best way to do that, and you may not see this yet, but you will once I do it, is to move this around to exponential form, because that's kind of the goal of a log, is to get the exponent piece alone. So I'm going to take this thing and spin it. I'm going to do that circle method we've been doing. It might throw you off a little bit that the x is over here on this side. You may want to think about it as like the x being over here, okay? So if I cover this up and I spin this thing around, I end up with 2 to the power of x equals y. Or in other words, y equals 2x, right? So I can say that this is the inverse of this function, that this exponential function is the inverse of this log function, okay? The other thing I could do is I could have put this into exponential form to begin with. And again, the y is over here on this side. Kind of imagine it's on this side and that we're going to circle it around. But that would end up looking like 2 to the power of y equals x. And then if you want to make the inverse, you're going to switch the x and the y, and it's going to end up looking like this thing down here. Okay? So I know I've got a lot going on here. I've got like 4 different functions wandering around. So just to clarify, these two up on the top are equivalent to each other. They are exactly the same thing. All right? One's just in log form, one's in exponential form. Down here, same thing. These two green ones are equal to each other. And then from here to here, this was me finding the inverse. So this is where I switched the x and the y around to get the inverse of these functions. Okay, same thing over here, inverse. And the ones that we actually care about, because you've got like 4 of them floating around now, but the ones that I actually care about are the ones that have y by themselves. So you notice I've got this log function, y equals log base 2 of x, and this exponential function. And what I really want you to take away is that these two are inverses of each other. And I want you to be able to take that shortcut. So if I give you a log function, I want you to immediately look at that base and say, oh, I can make an exponential function with that on the bottom. And that's going to be the inverse. You can go through this process or this process every single time if you want to, but I really, really want you to get to the point where you recognize these two things as being inverses of each other, because that means that they'll cancel each other out if we need them to, okay? So to kind of generalize, what we're saying here is that if I give you, let's see, y equals log base b of x, okay? And I ask you to find the inverse. Pen's wearing out a little bit. The inverse of that function is going to be y equals, sorry you guys can't see that, y equals b to the power of x. Whatever this base is, that's what's going to end up right here, okay? And these two functions are inverses of each other. Okay? That a log function with a base is the inverse of an exponential function with that same base. These two things, if I was to plug one into the other, they would cancel each other out and show that they leave just x behind. You don't know enough math about these logs yet to be able to do that, but you will see that eventually. So inverses, logs and exponents are inverses of each other. That was the big takeaway that I wanted you to have today. So just in case you didn't, you may want to write this down. You don't have to, but you will want to know it as you move into your homework for tonight. Okay, have a great day.